after we have been off for a little bit of summer vacation. I hope you've had some time to relax and enjoy the sun or hide from the sun. I know some of you polar bear people are out there. Um, I am part lizard, I swear. So today I would love to talk all things school. And a question that I have gotten so many times from people is, what was it like leaving teaching? So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that today, because I figure with the sound of the school bell right around the corner, we should chat a little bit about things that are school related. So for those of you who don't know, I taught high school agriculture for 13, 14 years. I had the student teaching and all of the substituting and all of the different things I did. I've been in education for about 14 years. I feel like when you're in education, you never truly leave it. I feel like there are always components of it in your life. But when you leave the day-to-day classroom, things can shift and migrate in a lot of different ways. So I feel like there are people who leave teaching, but they don't actually leave teaching. Lives just change, and maybe there's other things that they do. Maybe they tutor, maybe they mentor, maybe they help in other ways that are kind of behind the scenes. Maybe they help with grant writing and fundraising and all of that kind of stuff. Because once you have that bug, once you have that thing, once you have those moments with those students in the classroom where you've connected with them and they have become part of your family and they have really become part of who you are because they change you as much as you change them, I feel like that's really, really hard to undo. So, CTE, Career Technology Education, I was really fortunate to work in a comprehensive school. So, we were a wing of the school and integrated in the main part of the school as well. So, it was really nice if I had a question about a lab or something like that I was teaching. I was able to go walk down the hall and go talk to the biology teacher. If somebody had a question and I couldn't answer it, it let me have someone to collaborate with. We were a very small school. We still are a small school, but when I taught there, I was the only ag teacher. So being able to kind of bounce ideas off of other science brains was huge. Let's see, what did I actually teach? So for those of you who don't know me, I taught agriculture, as I said, but I taught an intro class, I taught an animal science class, I taught a biotechnology class, and then we taught a senior seminar class, which was our capstone class. And that class was really amazing because it gave students the flexibility to really jump into what their passion was and develop that for their future. So if somebody was really into some kind of technology, they could jump into that because let's face it, ag is everywhere and it's huge and it's gigantic, and you need technology, you need sales, you need accounting, you need marketing, you need planners, you need growers, you need fertilizers, the list goes on and on and on and on. And I think that's one of the things that's so amazing about ag is it's so diverse. So I lived in that world. It was absolutely amazing working with the students that I worked with, building those relationships that I actually still have to this day with many of them. I will get messages from some of my kids once in a while. I had a floriculture team who would compete for FFA, holler for FFA, and all of the competition and everything that we did. That was probably some of my favorite moments. I have many of them, but that was probably one of my most favorite moments is watching these kids work so hard to practice and study and work and understand and perform and do and go and compete and come back with that nervous bubble of energy of how did we place? What did we do? And then when you place first, second, third, 10th, it didn't matter. You still placed and you knew whether you had to work harder for the next time, where you made mistakes, where you needed to learn more, or where you had to be on your game because you had to compete in the next round. So working through all of those pieces with students was just a gift. It was truly a gift because being the only ag teacher, I got to work with those kids for 3 years because they would start in their sophomore year and go through the program. So I had them once a day in their sophomore year, once a day in their junior year, and then twice a day in their senior year. So we really spent a lot of time together. And there would be days where we would be on it and we would be getting all of these things accomplished, and students would be working all over the place on different things. We had a greenhouse that was attached. So some people would be working in the greenhouse, or the hydroponics that was in the back of the greenhouse, or working on something with any of the myriad of animals that I had in the classroom. It was always a busy, busy, busy place. I don't sit still well, so I never wanted my kids to feel like they had to come in, sit down, and sit the entire class period. And, you had to do these things. It was a lot of hands on. It was very interactive and also very student driven. I think some of the best learning came from when students were trying to do something and it didn't work, and watching the other students come together and work together to really, really figure out and dig in and how to help each other just is amazing to see. We were a very busy FFA as well. I mean, we constantly, every month, we had some kind of activity, be a fundraiser or some kind of community outreach, or just something to build the team and the togetherness. And I think I cried at every end of year ceremony that we had. I just, I really connected with those kids. And again, some of the context that I get back from some of my students of, hey, I actually used a micropipette today in my college class and had to show the other students because they had never done that. Or the random, I actually had to put together flowers today for my job, and I could do that because of the classes that we had, or just myriads of things. So education is very near and dear to my heart. And making the decision to step outside of the classroom and to leave education was probably one of the most gut-wrenching and hardest decisions that I ever made. And I think there's a couple layers to it. Um, you know, at first, when I first started Wildly Native and when I first started the business, it was something that was really great and fun, and it's still really great and fun. But it was one of those things that I was like, you know what, I'm going to start to grow some flowers. And that's what we did. And things just naturally grew. And I remember distinctly standing in the classroom the one day, and one of my employees, Kenley, was able to work her hours a little bit differently. So she was at the farm while I was at school a couple hours out of the day. She ended her school day earlier than I did, so she was able to be there. And we were getting phone calls. A lot of phone calls were going to voicemail because I couldn't answer during the day. I'd try to answer some calls during my lunch, but if it was anything that was lengthy, I knew that I had to answer that later in the day. So Kenley started making phone calls, and there was so much that was happening with the business. I distinctly remember standing in my classroom and going, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. It was a moment where I kind of stood there and was like, okay, I need to graduate. I have helped kids for years in various ways. I wasn't really good at helping them with the math class stuff. I always found another teacher that would work with a student if they came to me and they said, hey, I'm really struggling. I'd be like, cool. I know these 10 other teachers who can help you with the math stuff. Because parabolas and parallelograms and lots of letters, and I was always afraid that I would make a mistake and I would be teaching them something wrong, and I didn't want to do that. Give me all the science. I'll help you write anything you need. I can do all of those pieces. But my insecurity always has been those deep math concepts of calculus and uh, so know your strengths, know your weaknesses. I knew that was not my strength, so I knew to have those kids, help. Um, but I stood in the classroom and realized it's time for me to figure out what my next step is. I can either stay with this and Wildly Native can continue to be just a thing on the side, or I can take that leap of faith and make the decision to move forward with me, my personal career, my personal goals, and take that next step into that next phase of life. And I sat there and I was like, I have to make this decision. Like I have to figure it out. And it was definitely a moment of, okay, I'm ready. So it just kind of bubbled up inside. And I've had so many people say to me, and I've had so many people comment after, how did you escape? And that always makes me pause. Like,
Hey guys, Lizzie here. I bet you didn't know this about me, but I am gluten free, and one of the things that I struggle with is going to the grocery store and finding the foods that fit my dietary needs. What I have been doing for the past couple of months is ordering from Hungry Root. Now, Hungry Root is an online company where you can order groceries off of their website. It's full of produce, crackers, cookies, to muffins, to meats, and all the different types of snacks and things like that. They have made my life so much easier in the process of finding foods that fit my dietary needs. There are filters that you can adjust, such as non GMO, dairy free, gluten free, paleo, different preferences, and things like that. So, what they have done for us, because they're such a generous company, the Hungry Root team has given us a 40% off discount code on your first box. So, if you use the code FLOWER40, and that's capital FLOWER 40 at checkout, you will get 40% off your first box. I'm so excited to team up with these guys. They've made such an impact on my life in the morning and to my day to day life. And I hope you experience the exact same thing that I do. All of the information will be linked down below, including the link to where it should already be pre applied to your cart when you hit the link and go to their website. And I will also add the code at the bottom for easy access in our show notes. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and enjoy your first box through Hungry Root.
what do you mean? How did I escape? So I actually asked the one girl the one day, I said, what do you mean? How did you escape? I didn't escape. I made a career change. And she's like, but how did you escape teaching? How did you escape the security? How did you have the confidence to do that? And I feel like so many times teachers feel like they're stuck in their space because they're not sure what else they can go do. It's scary to have to leave to step into something else because teaching teaching has some security to it. You get tenure, you've got great benefits, you have retirement, you have all of those things. And I would definitely say I'm probably one of the anomalies that my undergraduate degree was in horticulture. Any of the trades teachers, I feel like it's easier for us to step into a different space because we have those certifications and other jobs. Where if you are a history teacher, that may be a different transition. Maybe that transition is a little more, high school to collegiate, still in education, but having a history background, would you be able to step into a museum job or something like that? So I feel like anybody in the CTEs, it's a little easy for us to kind of step into some of those other spaces. If you teach construction all day, you know it, so you can go do construction. I taught ag all day, so I could go do ag. So it's a little bit easier to make that jump. But I feel like what it boils down to and what it really boiled down to in the end is me. It boiled down to me and my confidence and me knowing that, one, I had hit my limit. I felt like I wasn't as, not that I wasn't as good because I loved what I did, but I just felt like I was tired. I felt like I was so tired. And there were so many things and there were so many different places that I could step into. So I really sat and spent so much time kind of alone by myself, trying to figure out who and where I was in life and what I wanted to do. Wildly Native had grown, more things were happening. There were all of these pieces starting to fall into place. And I truly believe in grace and in listening to the good Lord above telling you, giving you these messages and saying, you need to do these things. And I really felt called. I felt called to go take this next step. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. My son was still in high school, and I sat with him, and I needed him to tell me that he was okay. Um, and he was fine. I still think to this day he's a little butthurt about it. um, but the business had grown to a place where I couldn't be absent. I my dad and mom live next door to us on the farm, so they're right there. And my dad was helping customers during the day. My mom would send me a message and ask me questions, and it just became more and more and more obvious that I needed to be here and I needed to take those next steps. And we got busier and busier. And I finally came home to my husband because I had talked to Will. I knew Lizzie was vested because she is that design arm. I knew that she could handle it, and she still handles anything that I throw at her over and over and over. From things like, hey, let's start a podcast. Hey, let's start these things, and she's always like, okay. I will say sometimes she is a little like, whoa, wait a minute, pause, back up. What are we doing? And she'll ask great questions, and that's why it's really important to have a team, because then they can say, how are we doing this? What does that look like? Because apparently one of my phrases that I didn't know was one of my phrases when it comes to flowers is, oh, we can just tuck that in. And everybody busts my chops about that because I'm like, we can just tuck in a little extra here. We could tuck in a little extra over there. And they're like, stop tucking things in. You're killing us. um, so I went to my husband and we sat down and we had multiple long conversations. My husband, Joe, likes things very, very, I don't want to say rigid because that's not the right term, but he likes things to be safe. He likes things to have an A plus B equals C, where I'm much more of the A plus 23 equals 97 on Wednesday, and the answer is blue, which is why math with letters and numbers totally messes with me. But we sat down, and then we sat with our accountant and had a long conversation with him about what does that look like? How will this change things? I have one child in college, and in that time, I didn't have my other child in college yet. Um, what does this look like for retirement? What does this look like? What does this look like, and how will this impact us? And while I'm sitting at the table with my accountant and my husband saying, I'm confident this will work. And here's the numbers. And I've run things and I've figured it out. And I know we can do this. I have always been that confident. Actually, I haven't always been that confident person. I've always been that person to look at things in a positive perspective. Um, the saying, the glass is always half empty. Technically, the glass is always, always, always full. You have a glass, you fill it halfway with liquid, but the other half is filled with air. So no matter how full that glass is of the liquid, it's always full. So I really, really believe that if you believe in it and you work hard enough for it, you can make it happen and you can make it work. And trust me, we have made it work, and we have worked and worked and worked, and we still work. There is no time of year that is downtime. Everybody's like, oh, it must be nice to be off in January. And I look around and I go, who's off in January? Okay, so Maybe if it's snowing and I can't see, I'm off for a couple hours. But if it's snowing, I have to go out and clean off the tops of the hoop houses so they're not collapsing. And by the way, it doesn't matter if it's 3 a.m. or 3 p.m., still have to do it. But January, we're setting up the infrastructure, writing contracts, going through, trying to make sure things are set for the year. I almost think it's busier in January in a different brain space. But I made the decision, stuck with it. Joe swears that I am the type of person that if I'm on a plane, I can throw on a parachute, jump out, pull the parachute, it lands, and I land, and everything is fine. And I just keep going. He is the type of person where he packs his parachute, checks his parachute, stresses about maybe needing a second parachute, jumps halfway down, the parachute doesn't work, panics, then maybe there's a fix or something, the emergency parachute goes off, he lands and tries to figure out what happened. So, different perspectives, which was a lot of conversations. But needless to say, I that spring did go to HR, and the HR guy was actually really funny when I called because I had to set an appointment. I called and I said, I just wanted to call and touch base and let you know that there's been some changes. And he said, "Oh, Lord." He said, "I do not want to have this conversation, but I knew it was coming." And I cried. And then I couldn't stop crying because I was so just, it's such an emotional feeling of letting that go and knowing that I was so excited to take that next step and to do those next things, but such a raw emotion of, remember when I said that those kids come in the classroom and I have them for multiple years? I felt so guilty leaving my seniors. I felt awful. And then I felt awful and still feel awful that I left my son. But it was a moment that I had to step back and take a look at what was going to be better for me, for my family, and for my future. And I told the HR guy, I'm finished. I wasn't old enough to retire. And I wasn't in the system long enough to call it retired. So when people are like, "Oh, you retired," I just kind of don't know what to say to that. Sometimes I'm like, kind of, no, I didn't retire. I'm not old enough. Um, but it's a very real, raw emotion to leave something that you care about and love so deeply. It was not an easy decision. And I would venture to say any teacher who has left the profession, it's never an easy decision. The days are long, the years are short, and time goes by in a blink. But there's pieces and parts of you that live with so many of the students in everything that you did and everything that they did. So if you are considering how to leave education, how to leave teaching, how to step into your passion, I think it takes three things. I think it takes a lot of soul searching. I think it takes a lot of inner guts and confidence. And I am not a hugely confident person. I don't walk into a room and go, "Hey, I'm going to talk to all 1,000 people." I'm kind of a little bit more of that quieter person, believe it or not. Those large crowds sometimes make me nervous, and public speaking, man, sometimes that stuff makes my chin shake. I try really hard to hide that stuff, but sometimes that really does make me nervous. But have the confidence. Know that you are worth what you're about to step into. So that would be my first piece of advice, is have that confidence to know you are making the right decision, because you're going to question it. People are going to question it. They're going to ask you all kinds of questions about it. But know that you are doing the right thing when you commit to it. Second thing is have a good financial plan. This isn't I saw a TikTok yesterday that was, "Hey, I've come up with a great new plan for me and my bestie. We're going to open a flower shop with a coffee shop, rescue dogs. Oh, and by the way, it's in Belize. So I immediately text my best friend and was like, oh my God, I have our plan. We're going to go jump on a plane. I grow the flowers. You make the coffee. We can gather the dogs. And she was like, okay, book the flights. So I feel like there's always those moments. Um, but, and it's okay to have those, but you can't have those for real for life. It's neat to like think about, but you have to have a good solid financial plan because you don't want to fall on your face and stress, because stress and money and life, all of that is intertwined and it's real. I guess my third piece of advice, my third tip would be to surround yourself with like-minded people who will lift you up. I know there's days where I stress about making the right decision. I know there's days where I worry about even small decisions. I try to make sure that I ask the questions of the people who will help me reflect the best in a way that doesn't tear me down. And having a close circle of people that you can be raw and real around is really important. And it may not always be your family. You may have friends that you can do that with. Ask them the same question 300 times and they don't judge you for it. Ask the questions of your professional friends where, oh my gosh, I've made a mistake. I need help. What do I do? We all need those people in our lives. And I feel as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, it's really important because people expect us to have our lives together all the time. They expect us to always have the answer. They expect us to always put our shiny foot forward. I am not Cinderella. I do not always have a shiny foot. Sometimes my feet are in boots, by the way. A lot of the times I'm barefoot or running around in socks, but that's a whole different story. Um, but have the confidence, go forward, know that you can do it. And I know it's all over all of our perspectives. And my whole goal is to help people indulge in nature. But today, friends, take a moment and indulge in you. So happy thoughts. Thank you for listening. So excited to be back on the podcast. Reach out with questions, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of the day. Thanks for listening.
Hey guys, just dropping a line to tell you about Patreon.
So I asked them, meaning Mom and Amber, what is Patreon anyway? Because I honestly had no idea. So we're going to explain it to you from our perspective so that you understand and so that I understand.
Because the first time I saw it, I was like, Patron, we're drinking tequila? Great. So Patreon is for less than a cup of coffee, those fancy coffees that y'all like, a day, you can sign up to become one of our members.
A little family.
Exactly. And what does that get us?
It gets us some freebies, some special episodes that other people do not get access to. You can interact with us on a special platform where we can ask you questions and interact with you. It's tons of fun.
Mm-hmm. And even on those special episodes, we might be less censored than we are already. And we're going to have a couple fun ones that we can just kind of throw in there and talk about and laugh and go on tangents and have fun. So I hope that you all enjoy it because we're going to have fun along the way. We're crazy, crazy, crazy excited.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Back to the episode now.
Yeah.
Bye.
Gotcha!